Have you ever thought about, all the stories that are kind of hidden in plain sight? Like how dust carries traces of like everything it's touched?
Yeah.
Today, we're going to be taking that idea
Okay.
and applying it to something much bigger.
All right.
The African diaspora.
Okay.
We're diving into the 1991 film Daughters of the Dust today,
Okay.
and an academic paper that analyzes its themes.
Ah, yes. Daughters of the Dust, a visually stunning film.
Yeah.
And this paper really gets to the core of how the film uses the Gula community
Right.
on Igbo Landing, this isolated island
Yeah.
off the coast of South Carolina, to explore those complexities of the African diaspora.
Yeah.
It really challenges us to think about memory,
Right.
identity, and how we preserve culture.
Okay, so for anyone who needs like a quick refresher, the Gula people are descendants of West African slaves.
Right.
Who ended up on this isolated island back in 1902. The film really emphasizes how that isolation was really important to their lives. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it? You know, that isolation,
Yeah.
it becomes this double-edged sword.
Right.
On the one hand, they were able to preserve so much of their African heritage,
Yeah.
language, traditions,
Wow.
even spiritual practices, things that might have been lost if they were on the mainland.
Right.
So Igbo Landing is like this time capsule. But on the other hand, it creates tension,
Right.
this real push and pull between holding on to the past and, embracing the future.
Yeah.
Really gets to the heart of what it means to be part of a diaspora.
So it's not just about like the geographical dispersal.
No.
Right. The paper says that there's a deeper internal struggle that's
Yes,
going on.
yes.
And the film embodies this through the peasant family.
Yeah.
They're like the main focus of the story.
Exactly. The peasant family becomes this microcosm of the African diaspora.
Wow.
Each person represents a different stage in this struggle between remembering and moving on.
Yeah.
So we've got Nana Peazant, the matriarch. She's the one who embodies that fierce
Right.
connection to the ancestors and their memories. And she carries the weight of the past. Slavery, colorism, forced migration.
Wow.
You can feel her determination to make sure the younger generations don't forget.
And that creates some friction, right? Because the younger generation is looking towards the mainland, towards a new life,
Yeah.
new opportunities, a
Yeah.
life outside of the island. It's like they're being pulled in two different directions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's the perfect visual representation
Yeah.
of the struggle so many descendants of the African diaspora face.
Yeah.
It begs the question, how do you honor your history while also forging your own path?
Right.
And the film doesn't shy away from how complicated that is.
And there's that scene where Yellow Mary, one of the younger peasants,
Right.
returns to the island with her lover, Trula.
Yes.
They're dressed very modern, which seems very out of place
Yeah.
on Igbo Landing. What did you think about that scene?
Well, the paper makes a really good point about it.
Okay.
It's not just about a visual difference between past and present.
Right.
It's deliberate.
Mm-hmm.
Keep in mind, they're on a boat,
Yeah.
and they're surrounded by people talking about the past.
Right.
Relatives who spoke African languages, how they continued to transport slaves even after the war.
Wow.
So you have this representation of modern times right next to this connection to the past, just through storytelling,
Right.
which highlights for the Gula people,
Yeah.
the past isn't just something that happened a long time ago.
Right.
It's part of their everyday lives.
So the film is saying that the African diaspora is this living, breathing thing.
Yes.
Right. It's constantly changing. It's not static.
Exactly. And the way the film portrays memory is a big part of that.
Okay.
Think about Nana Peazant. She's always reminding her family to listen to their ancestors,
Right.
to let their wisdom guide them.
It seems like she's the one who embodies all that ancestral knowledge. There's a scene where we see peasant women performing African dances on the beach.
Yes.
They're all dressed in white, moving rhythmically, almost like it's a ceremony.
Right.
The caper talks about what those dances mean.
Yes. It's a great point. Those dances aren't just entertainment.
Right.
The paper says they are acts of defiance, taking back African traditions
Okay.
that were demonized during slavery.
Wow.
It's about cultural memory as a form of resistance. And it's a powerful way to show the spirit of their ancestors.
So it's like they're using their past to help them with the challenges in the present and the uncertainty of the future.
Exactly. Daughters of the Dust wants us to understand that
Yeah.
for people in the African diaspora,
Yeah.
Memory is about survival. But what's interesting
Okay.
is that the film also shows that not everyone sees it that way.
Oh, really?
Some of the younger family members think that Nana is stuck in the past,
Right.
that she's weighed down by it.
And I can see their point.
It makes sense.
Who wants to keep reliving the trauma of their ancestors?
It's valid. And it shows the tension within the African diaspora.
Mm.
You know, is there a chance of getting stuck in all that trauma?
Yeah.
Shouldn't we be focused on healing and the future?
Yeah.
But the paper argues that the film is saying that we need to acknowledge the past in order to heal.
Okay.
Remember when Nana talks about the lack of family records because of slavery?
Yes.
Families were ripped apart and their history was erased.
Right.
She highlights how important elders are in passing down stories. They become like living archives. It's not about being sad.
Right.
It's about understanding how historical trauma is shaping inequalities today.
And that connects to a bigger theme within the African diaspora.
Yes.
Which is how important it is to remember even the really painful traits of history.
Yes.
The film even quotes Marcus Garvey, who said, "The more I remember the suffering of my forefathers, the more I will fight on." So remembering becomes like fuel for making a positive change.
That's it. Remembering isn't about getting stuck.
Yeah.
It's about understanding where we come from and fighting for a better future.
Right.
Which brings us to that scene with Nana Peazant,
Yeah.
who's pregnant and talking to her baby.
Oh, yeah. She's telling her child how important it is to acknowledge the past.
Exactly.
Even the painful parts.
And there's this line that always gets me. She says that their ancestors have seen things that you and I don't have the power to see.
Wow.
It reminds us that the past isn't just gone. It shapes who we are.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
And it takes us to the main tension point of the film.
Yes.
When some family members decide to leave Igbo landing and go to the mainland.
Yes.
It's a really emotional decision.
It is. There's excitement for new opportunities,
Yeah.
but also a feeling of loss.
Yeah.
And a fear that they'll lose their connection to their roots.
Yeah.
And it all leads up to one of the most powerful scenes in the film.
You're talking about that scene with Nana before the younger generation leaves.
Exactly. She cuts some of her hair, puts it in a can.
Right.
Most people watching probably wouldn't know what that means.
Yeah.
But the paper explains it. It's an African tradition that's meant to create a spiritual connection between those who stay and those who go.
So even though they're physically separating,
Yes.
there's this thing that symbolically binds them together.
Yes.
And then Nana says, "We are two people in one body."
That line, two people in one body.
Yeah.
It's a metaphor for the African diaspora, don't you think?
It does seem like she's talking about that constant tension we've been talking about. You know, how you hold on to the past,
Right.
but also embrace the future, feeling connected to so many different worlds and identities.
Exactly. And it emphasizes that even when people move on and build new lives,
Right.
there's still a connection,
Yeah.
a shared history and collective memory that goes beyond time and space.
It's like she's acknowledging how complicated it is to be a part of the African diaspora.
And that's something the film wants us to really think about, to wrestle with.
Right.
It's not about simple answers. It's about understanding the nuances.
Yeah. It really is a powerful image.
It is.
It speaks to that resilience we see in the whole film. You know, acknowledging all those layers of experience.
It's true.
And history.
Yeah. Daughters of the Dust doesn't offer any simple solutions.
Right.
But I think that's what makes it so interesting.
Yeah.
It asks us to think about these really hard questions. Questions about memory and identity.
Right.
About belonging.
Yeah.
To consider how we carry the past with us.
Right.
And how we honor it.
Right.
While also, you know, making our own future.
I'm really struck by how the film uses dust to do this.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like dust is like a character
It's brilliant. Yeah.
in the film.
The paper talks about how dust is this element that's constantly moving, you know, traveling across huge distances.
Yeah.
And it carries with it these tiny little pieces of everything it's ever touched.
Yeah. It's like a metaphor for the African diaspora itself.
it is.
Right? This constant movement of people, cultures, ideas
Yeah.
across time and space.
And just like dust settles in unexpected places, the African diaspora has left its mark everywhere.
Wow.
It's changed languages, music, art, food.
Yeah.
It's a part of global culture.
But dust is also fragile, right?
That's
It
true.
can be so easily, blown away by the wind.
Exactly. And that brings us back to memory.
Right.
If we don't make an effort to protect our histories, our stories, and our traditions, we could lose them.
Right.
They could just scatter like dust.
It's a powerful thought. It makes me think about films like Daughters of the Dust. Yeah. You know, they're like these acts of remembrance.
Yeah.
Right.
They remind us that our pasts are not burdens,
right,
but sources of strength and inspiration.
So this film was made over 30 years ago.
Right.
It's about this very specific community on this island. Why should our listeners care about it today?
Well, because the themes are universal.
Yeah.
Struggles with memory and identity.
Right.
The tension between tradition and moving forward, the need to belong.
Yeah.
Those are things that we all relate to.
It's a reminder that we're all part of something bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
This historical line that connects us to other people and places.
Exactly.
Places we might not even know about.
It challenges us to think about how we can take what we learn from this film, you know, about resilience and preserving culture.
Right.
And apply it to our own lives and communities.
Yeah.
How can we honor the past and still create a future?
Yeah.
That's fair and just for everyone.
Those are big questions.
They are.
And Daughters of the Dust gives us like a framework for how to even think about them.
Yeah.
It encourages us to be curious about our pasts.
Right.
To listen to the stories of our ancestors.
It reminds us that we're all part of this larger story, this tapestry made of human experiences.
You know, as we're talking about all this, I'm realizing that Daughters of the Dust is doing something really cool.
Okay.
It's not just about looking back.
Yeah.
It's also about giving us the tools to navigate the world today.
That's a great point. The film wants us to have a better understanding of history.
Right.
And identity.
Yeah.
It's not about clinging to the past or erasing it.
Right.
It's about figuring out a way to honor it while still making our own way.
And that connects to a lot of what we're talking about today, right?
It does.
About cultural appropriation, reparations.
Yes.
The need to change how we think about things.
Daughters of the Dust reminds us that we can't just ignore the past or pretend it didn't happen.
Right.
It's built into our present.
But we can choose how that past shapes our future.
That's a big question for us then.
Yeah.
How do we balance honoring the past with creating our own paths?
Right.
How do we build a future rooted in our heritage, but also open to new possibilities?
It's a tough question.
It is.
But it's one worth thinking about.
And Daughters of the Dust gives us a place to start.
Right.
Tells us to be curious.
Yeah.
To listen, to have honest conversations.
Yeah, it feels like we're really being challenged to like go deeper, you know?
Yeah.
Not just stay on the surface.
Yeah.
To really think about this stuff.
Right. It's about knowing that we're all part of this bigger story.
Right.
This tapestry of all these human experiences. And recognizing how connected we are.
Yeah.
Our shared humanity is so important if we want a better world.
It's like Daughters of the Dust gives us a whole new way
It does.
of looking at things.
Yeah.
One that sees the challenges, but also the beauty and resilience.
The film doesn't shy away from the tough stuff.
Right.
But in the end,
Yeah.
it gives us hope.
Yeah.
A feeling that we can learn from the past
Right.
and make a better future.
This has been an incredible deep dive.
It has.
Daughters of the Dust has so much to teach us.
It does. And like always, a deep dive, like this isn't about getting all the answers.
Yeah.
It's about sparking that curiosity, challenging what we think we know,
Yeah.
and understanding the world around us better.
So to wrap up,
Yeah.
I want to leave everyone with something to think about.
Okay.
How can we use what we learned today about resilience and preserving culture
Yeah.
in our own lives,
Right.
in our communities?
Uh-huh.
How can we honor the past
Right.
and still build a path
Yeah.
to a better future?
That's the question.
It's a question worth thinking about.
It is.
A question that can guide us
Yeah.
as we figure out this complicated world we live in.
Absolutely.